With the war in Iran continuing, but Donald Trump saying he's giving yet another 10-day extension before promising to smash the life out of the electricity national grid in Iran, it's hard to know what's going on. Is Donald Trump playing the market, or Iran, or the rest of us? I'm Lembit Öpik. We're going to discuss Trump's market mayhem.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. Boring. Boring.
Okay, get into it. Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome once again. I'm Lembit Öpik. This is Lembit Öpik Live, and it is live if you're watching it on the morning of the 27th of March, I think. And I mentioned that date because things are so fast moving. I want the archive to record when we made the predictions we're going to make. And here on Unprecedented TV, which I hope you're going to like and subscribe, costs you nothing. It's only 30 seconds on YouTube, and it helps us a lot. We're going to ask, what is Donald Trump up to when it comes to the money markets? Almost every day, he changes his stance about what he's going to do in regard to Iran. Unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that the United States and Israel have launched a fairly persistent assault on Iran. And Iran has responded, not least because they killed the Ayatollah Khamenei, the head of Iran, some weeks ago. But Donald Trump's curious behavior has led to rather curious consequences. The money markets are shooting up and then coming down. Oil prices are drifting down, then rocketing up again. And some say there's been some curious trading on the international money markets. Now, we can't point the finger of blame at any one person, but it does raise the obvious question, what is Donald Trump trying to do? Is this the art of the deal, changing your mind every other day, or does he think he'll disorientate the wily Iranians by changing what he's saying? Well, these are the questions we're going to try to answer today. And before we go further, David Scatcherd 9056 is saying a very nice thing. Can't wait for Lembit. I hope you're not being ironic. Thanks very much. Ricky over in the Philippines says, hello, one and all, 5 p.m. in the Philippines. So easy for you, Ricky. We have to get up at the crack of dawn just for your delectation. Joining me now is somebody else who's up. It's Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Lembit.
I want to ask you, what's your doctorate in?
Russian history.
Ah, so you could be an enemy of the state then.
I think I've been an enemy of the state according to British mainstream media since the day I was born.
Well, you're a friend of Unprecedented TV, so we could be guilty by association in that case. Let's start then with this curious activity by Donald Trump, the president of the United States. Now, he's in a remarkable position. It was a very menacing picture they found. He's in a remarkable position because his very words can alter markets. He says, I'm going to bomb Iran's infrastructure and the markets sink. Or he says, I'm going to give Iran another 10 days and the markets go up. Big picture, and let's make sure we don't get sued because we've only got a small legal team here at Unprecedented. What's going on? What is he trying to do by changing his pronouncement about when and what he's going to bomb almost every day?
Granted, the situation is a peculiar one, but it is not inexplicable. First and foremost, we must be aware that Trump took America into war with Iran because he is beholden to the Israelis. He is more beholden to the Israelis than any of his predecessors. And as a result of this war, America and the American people effectively are in a deep quagmire. Trump drones on day to day, claiming that Iran has been destroyed. So not so long ago, he said that 95% of Iran's missile force has been destroyed. Then he says 90% of Iran's missile force has been destroyed. And yet, whilst he makes those illogical statements, Iranian missiles are raining down all across Israel, including on Dimona, where Israel's nuclear facilities are. And also, Iranian missiles are raining down on what remains of American military bases in the Persian Gulf. So Trump is in a very serious situation. Iran has not been defeated, as the Israelis and, of course, the Americans had hoped for. They seriously miscalculated Iranian military capabilities. They also seriously miscalculated Iranian resolve. For decades, American mainstream media, along with British mainstream media, and of course, along with Israel, put out a false narrative about the Iranian population, namely that the Iranian population is enslaved by the Iranian government, that the Iranian population hate the Iranian government, that the Iranian population just want to live like Americans. Well, the truth of the matter is that the vast majority of Iranians inside of Iran support the Iranian government, and in particular, they support the Iranian Revolution of 1979, because the Iranian Revolution returned Iran to the Iranian people. Iranians are extremely patriotic, indeed nationalistic people, and of course they are extremely pious people. We since the beginning of the year, we've also heard another false narrative that the Iranian government massacred between 30 and 40,000 of its own people during a uprising. Well, who claimed that figure? How was that figure calculated? Again, like everything else concerning Iran, it is a lie. Yes, there was an uprising created by the Americans and Israel. Indeed, Mossad, Lembit, has even openly admitted that it created or it helped to bring about that uprising, and it channeled weapons into Iran, into the hands of those militants. Many of the people who died, and the figure is about 3,500 to 3,500, many of those people were police officers and members of the security forces. And what Western mainstream journalists, for example, will not tell you is that some of the people who were arrested and then executed after having been found guilty in a court of law in Iran butchered, literally butchered with machetes, Iranian police officers. So again, the American people, because Trump is beholden to the Israelis, are in a quagmire, and a very deep quagmire at that.
You mentioned the relationship between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, and that there they are. And I've heard an argument, many people have heard, I'm sure you have, that Trump and America didn't want to go into this war, but Netanyahu, who's got his own domestic problems, and let's not forget some legal problems as well, personal legal problems, that he actually started it, and America just had to join in. I know we're not going to be able to prove it one way or the other, but what's your opinion?
Sheldon Adelson, the late Sheldon Adelson, is the man who introduced Trump and Netanyahu to one another. And as a result of that, both men have benefited immensely in numerous ways, including in monetary ways. And because Trump has other dealings with the Israelis, he has made himself extremely vulnerable. All American presidents, Lembit, are beholden to the Israelis. It comes with the job, it comes with the territory. But the difference is this: whilst the likes of Clinton, Bush, and Obama were beholden to the Israelis because they were the American president, Trump is beholden to the Israelis, not only because he is the American president, but because he has personal ties to the Israelis. And along with the Epstein files, that, in my opinion, accounts for why Trump took America into this war. Do I believe that Trump wanted to go to war with Iran? No, I don't. But essentially, he is controlled by the Israelis. And he's not the only one. The likes of Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for War, is also beholden to the Israelis. So we can discuss how Trump can end this war, but I struggle to understand how he can end this war when he is so beholden to the Israelis.
Well, there's Hegseth, who insists on being called the Minister for War. Talk about a testosterone-ridden change of name. I notice even the mainstream media in Britain tend to call him the Minister for Defence. So you're saying that both of those picture cards in the pack of American politics are beholden to Israel?
Absolutely. All you need to do is listen to speeches by Hegseth or Lindsey Graham, and you will be able to conclude that what they say is not merely a matter of them sympathizing with Israel and sympathizing with the objectives of the Israeli government. No, it goes well beyond that. Lindsey Graham, for example, said not so long ago that he will return to his constituency and he will ask mothers and fathers to send their sons and daughters to fight against Iran. Now, that is a little more than an American politician simply being sympathetic to Israel. That tells you that Lindsey Graham, for example, is in the pockets of the Israelis, because it is simply abnormal for a foreign politician to say that they want the sons and daughters of their constituents to die for another country.
You could
There
say
is no other explanation for it.
Well, as you could say that Lindsey Graham is just trying to be a shock jock. He's just trying to get headlines for being deliberately provocative.
The man is into his 80s now. He doesn't need to say that. He has been a politician for many years now. So that is not a sufficient explanation. He says a lot more than that as well. So clearly, what we are seeing is something that many of us have been aware of for a very long time, and indeed before I was born, that Israel and the Israel lobby exerts immense influence in America. Is America controlled by Israel? I'm still not sure about that. However, is the Trump administration controlled by Israel? Without a doubt, yes.
So that's an interesting point. It's a bit of a digression from what I was going to talk about. But the story so far is you think that the whole situation has been caused by the relationship between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. You say there's a personal interaction there. And putting all that together, it means that Trump's in a bit of a bind.
Yes, he is. The wife of the late Sheldon Adelson, Miriam Adelson, single-handedly financed Trump's campaign in 2024. The amount of money that she donated is simply mind-boggling. So that demonstrates that whilst the husband, Sheldon, is dead, the relationship with the Adelson family continues, meaning between Trump and the Adelson family. So Trump,
I take it the Adelson family is closely related to Israel.
Absolutely.
Okay, hold that thought, because time races on. We're going to start looking at the markets after the break and see what happens, and I'll try and get some of your comments in as well. Frankie Zen says, what a load of rubbish. Okay. I'll scroll down and we'll get my team to scroll down and see if you explain which part of it you think is rubbish. I will read it out. Also, one more, David, more beholden to Israel than his own people. Tends to be agreeing with what you're saying there. I'll just go one more, actually. I don't plan on defending a bunch of bankers, feminists, and gender benders. What a country. That's from Rightful Seed. Do please put your comments in, as long as they're legal. I'll read them out. Somebody else who is tremendous value here at Unprecedented TV. A reason to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel is Claire Dyer, who runs Dire Consequences, and she finds local stories with national importance. That's Claire Dyer, brilliant value, brilliant person as well, actually. Shows real courage and gets hassle for it as well from the state. Seems to be a characteristic of many people come onto Unprecedented TV. They ruffle the feathers of the conformist birds in Parliament. She's one of them. Somebody else who thinks for himself, Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos, is with me. Story so far, you're saying that a lot of what's going on in the Iran conflict is really driven by Israel, followed by America, and Iran are the victims. It's all about oil, though, isn't it? It's really, that's where the leverage comes from. If Iran was dirt poor and had no power over shipping in the Straits of Hormuz, which is that narrow part, thank you, yeah, that narrow part of land, I think it's only 20 kilometers across, 12 miles, where they can essentially threaten to wipe out any ship that goes through. If it wasn't for that, Iran would be in a weak bargaining position. Tell me what you think is Iran's strongest. I'm not trying to lead the witness here, so I'll say it this way. I think it's the whole oil thing and Strait of Hormuz. That's what gives Iran so much power. But what do you make of the situation?
Yes, Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz is in many ways their trump card, because as we see, the Americans are unable to break Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz. And as a result of that, energy prices in all four corners of the world are rising, and rising dramatically. And simultaneous to that, Russia, which has a strategic partnership with Iran, is the main economic beneficiary of this war, because approximately 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. As a result of this war, and as a result of Iran having closed the Strait of Hormuz, it means that countries across the world are now turning to Russia for Russian oil. So the Iranians are making their Russian friends and allies an immense amount of money.
Well, you could argue the Americans and the Israelis are doing that, considering in an ironic twist of fate, and I'm sure you noticed that Donald Trump decided to lift sanctions on Iranian oil for some reason. And I wasn't really clear on that. Was that telling us that he actually is still trying to twist the tail of the Russians? We'll maybe have a quick word about Ukraine at the end. It seemed totally contradictory that they lifted the sanctions on Iranian oil while fighting Iran?
Well, I think to be precise, Trump announced that sanctions on Iranian vessels carrying oil, which were already at sea, would no longer be sanctioned. He hasn't removed sanctions on on the export of Iranian oil as such. And the Iranian government have said that there are not many Iranian vessels at sea at present anyway. So what Trump said amounts to nothing. However, lifting sanctions on the Russian export of oil is something else, because Trump has caused this energy crisis in the world. And as a result of that, he is now hoping that Russia can ease the problem in the world, because, of course, Russia has one of the largest amounts of reserves of oil in the world. So Trump, again, in an economic sense, not just in a military and political sense, but in an economic sense, is in a very deep quagmire.
Yeah, and one which seemed to be a bit of his, as you say, of his own doing. I'm actually slightly confused also. I'm maybe being a bit cynical when I say that. I'm not really confused at all. I'm amused by the fact that after spending hundreds of billions trying to beat the Russians in Ukraine, the Americans are now saying, oh, go and start selling your oil. I know we've opened the market for you. We've pushed up prices. Go and start selling your oil. But we'll talk about that in a minute. A super tanker, one like that one, that can carry 2 to 3 million barrels of oil. And it's interesting because the Iranians are now, they've got essentially created a toll of $2 million, is it? But you're not allowed to pay in dollars. You have to pay in yen, I think. $2 million per ship. Now, that sounds like a lot, but it's trivial because one of those can carry 2 to 3 million barrels of oil. A barrel of oil is worth $100. So it only has $1 to the cost. The Iranians are able to capitalize on it too, aren't they?
Yes, they are. As you said, the toll is almost like pocket money compared to what is on those tankers. But it demonstrates that Iran doesn't just have a military advantage in this war, but it also has an economic advantage. After all, the Iranian government can continue to fight this war with the knowledge that it has an infinite amount of oil and gas to sustain the Iranian military. And now we hear that Trump has dispatched a few thousand American Marines and paratroopers to the Persian Gulf. Well, if his idea is to capture an Iranian island as a way of putting pressure on the Iranian government, as a way of diverting some of the Iranian military's capabilities away from striking Iran and away from striking American military bases in the Persian Gulf, then yes, it's a gambit. I can see that there could be some logic there. However, those Marines and paratroopers would first of all have to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, or they would have to enter the Persian Gulf from Iraq. And of course, as we know, in Iraq, there are many Shia militias which look to Iran for leadership. So if those paratroopers and Marines are going to attempt to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, then they will be in a killing zone. If, on the other hand, they attempt to enter the Persian Gulf from Iraqi territory, then they will be attacked by Iraqi militias, which, as I said, are loyal to Tehran. If somehow they manage to approach one of the Iranian islands in the Persian Gulf, then they will be attacked, ferociously attacked with Iranian missiles. And also, the Iranian army is waiting on those islands. They are waiting to fight American Marines and American paratroopers in hand-to-hand combat.
You're talking about Karg Island, aren't you? There it is again.
Yes, and there are other islands. And British mainstream media is projecting the arrival of American paratroopers and American Marines as being possibly the end, as signaling possibly the end of the war, which is ludicrous, which is fanciful, which is laughable. A few thousand American soldiers will not defeat the Iranian military. They will not defeat the Iranian government. Let us not forget that American paratroopers and American Marines received a hiding in Vietnam during the war there. So again, we are witnessing the projection of the myth of American military invincibility. And it is just that, a myth, and a crude one, which has been built by Hollywood and American mainstream media.
Well, they do have some pretty impressive software. The B-1B bomber, for example, is an amazing thing. It uses thousands of gallons of fuel an hour. Apparently, the war on climate change is now over. They've lost interest in that one. Inconvenient. But these massive aircraft taking tons and tons of bombs, you would, in a way, think that their relentless bombing could work. But you've been very accurate on that. The fact is that the North Vietnamese, with their limited resources, once again though, bankrolled to an extent by the Soviet Union at the time, they were able to defeat the might of the Americans. Why is it? I kind of think I know the answer to, but why is it that these enormous aircraft and the essentially limitless resources of the American military, with a little help from from Israel, they can't beat the Iranians?
Firstly, no war can be won with air power alone. That is a reality. Secondly, the Iranian government have, ever since the end of the Iraq-Iran war, have developed a very large, efficient, organized and powerful armaments sector. And much of that armaments sector is concealed deep inside of mountains which are impenetrable. Yes, the American Air Force has formidable aircraft. However, not even the aircraft of a superpower is able to penetrate the kind of mountains that we see in Iran. And Iran is a very large country, and it is a largely mountainous country. So the Americans can deploy whatever aircraft they want against Iran. It is not going to defeat the Iranian military. It is not going to defeat the Iranian government. It is not going to, in the words of Trump, obliterate the Iranian stockpile of missiles. Because yes, Iran in this war has used a lot of its missiles, and they've started to use more of their advanced missiles. But still, on a daily basis, armaments factories in Iran, deep inside of mountains, are producing large amounts of missiles. So the problem for the Americans and the Israelis is this, is that air power cannot on its own win a war. And as a result, this air war against Iran has been so far an abject failure. Yes, Iran has sustained enormous damage, but so too has Israel, and so too have the Americans in the context of their military bases. Let us not forget that the most advanced American aircraft in their arsenal, the F-35, a so-called stealth aircraft, was recently struck by an Iranian missile. So again, the Americans are a military superpower.
Well, they're calling it friendly fire. That they say, oh, it's all friendly fire, that the Iranians haven't shot anyone down. I don't believe that. There was a claimed collision between two KC-135s. They're basically very big aircraft based on a commercial plane called the Boeing 707. But in order for that to happen, one of the pilots would have had to be 50 meters out 150 feet out in his positioning, and I just don't think that would have happened. Let's talk about and finish by talking about this, the impact on markets. The American stock exchange has been going up and down and up and down. And it seems to me that, well, there have been accusations of insider trading, let's be blunt. But it seems to me that if you're making decisions which can bounce the entire market, that puts you in a rather curious position. Some of my genuinely negative friends about Donald Trump say that Trump's just playing the market. I don't tend to believe that, and I'll tell you why. It's because it's just too big a deal, even for Trump to bounce the entire market just in order to make money or to get his friends to make money without getting us sued. What's your view?
Well, the reality is that because of the energy crisis in the world, because of the uncertainties that the stock markets across the world are experiencing, in America, for example, Americans are now paying more for their oil. And that is going to be a very major problem for the Trump administration, not just in the long term, but in the short term. And of course, this year, there are midterm elections. And unless Trump can somehow end this war, and as I said, I don't see how he can end it, especially when the Iranians have said that they will decide when and how the war ends.
Yeah.
It means that the Trump administration, after the midterm elections, effectively will have had their wings clipped, because the Democrats look like they will take control on Capitol Hill. Now, that's not to say that the Democrats are any better than their Republican counterparts. No, they're not. They're just as violent. They're just as pro-war. But what Trump said in his election campaign is that there would be no more wars, that the American economy will not go to the aid of other countries in the world. And he specifically said, no war with Iran. So that is why essentially MAGA is dead. And what has replaced it is America First, led by the likes of Thomas Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and of course, Rand Paul.
The not to be mixed up with the drag queen, which sounds a bit the same, RuPaul. That's right, totally different people. Leading to the obvious question between Donald Trump and the new leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. There he is. Who's in the driving seat? Let's remember that this gentleman's father was killed, together with various members of his family, in the extreme violent bombing raids. I actually thought that was against military etiquette to decapitate the leadership, because who do you negotiate with? I'll come to that question in just a minute. Let me just read some messages. The question I'll come back to you in a minute is, how is this gentleman doing? Let's just see. Rightful C says, I don't plan on defending a bunch of bankers. I had read that one. Feminists and gender benders. What a country. Ricky Sickles saying, who are you talking about? The show just came up on my feed. So there's a debate about who's being criticized. That's fine. Ricky adds, I see Russia and the US administration seem to be working together to stymie the Iranian oil fields. The Russian oil companies are most likely paying the float fee. Interesting, cryptic as well. As long as the Marines have crayons and to eat, the IRGC is cooked. I think that's probably some kind of a military comment. Vietnam was given away at the Paris talks, he adds. The US and their allies won that. Okay. And he finishes with a friend of mine who's now passed on, was on the last helicopter out of Saigon. He said that the NVA, North Vietnamese Army, all got in ranks and saluted them as they left. Well, I'm not surprised, because frankly, what's the point of not saluting them after they did leave, to be honest with you, Ricky? But that's another story. So I want to get back to this question. How is this man, who we haven't seen in public, and people say why? Well, because he doesn't want to be killed. That's why. But how is he doing?
Well, clearly he is in a fortified bunker, and I suspect an impenetrable bunker somewhere in Iran. It would not surprise me if he is in one of those. If he's in a bunker inside of a mountain which is impenetrable. After all, his father was killed in an office building in Tehran. His father refused to leave the building. And also his father was an old man, and by some accounts he was terminally ill. So there is no reason for the current Ayatollah to be seen in public. After all, the war can be directed from him, but by him from a bunker. But at the same time, Iran is more than one man. There are 92 million people in Iran, and those 92 million people will not tolerate their country being attacked, and they will most certainly not tolerate 1 inch of Iranian soil being occupied by foreigners. All of the tension, Lembit, that we see today between the West and Iran stems from the early 1950s, when the CIA and MI6 overthrew the then Iranian prime minister, which then meant that the Shah of Iran at that time was free to make Iran a colony of the West. So when we hear the likes of Trump or whoever else say that tension began in 1979 following the Iranian Revolution, that is not true. It began in the early 1950s following an American and British coup in Iran.
Okay, so I want to finish with pretty much where we started. In terms of the money markets, you know who these two people are?
I don't believe
Robert Redford and Paul Newman, from a film called The Sting, which is about a great gamble and a piece of fake trickery that makes them rich. Is Donald Trump playing a great sting on the world?
I find that difficult to believe. I'd like to see evidence to corroborate that argument. I don't think it is in the interests of America's allies in the Persian Gulf, namely the Arab Gulf countries, for this war to have taken place. After all, they are in very serious trouble, and much of America's oil comes from the Arab Gulf countries. It passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So I can't see how Trump is deliberately doing this to the American market, or indeed to the world market as a whole.
And the final question for you is something which, when I put this up, almost feels surprising, but there we are. Thank they put it up. Zelensky ready to surrender. There's another war going on, but no one really talks about it much anymore. I'm assuming that Zelensky is in an even worse state now. If you're watching this live, he's somewhere in the Middle East, as far as I know. But that game's up, isn't it?
Well, what it demonstrates is that not even a superpower can fight a war on two fronts simultaneously. The Americans have sent a vast amount of munitions to Israel since the start of this war, and they will continue to do so. The Americans also need a vast amount of munitions for themselves to carry on attacking Iran. Thus, they do not have weapons for Ukraine. So, as I said, even a superpower has limitations.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. That's Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos, PhD. And I'll just add two thoughts. Number one, Strait of Hormuz does seem to be the gambling chip for Iran, and they are gatekeeping it. You can come through, you can't. And as Marcus says, despite the might of the United States, they can't apparently stop a couple of geezers on a jet ski with a rocket-propelled grenade from wiping out a supertanker. Second thing is, Marcus is more optimistic than others about what's going on in the markets. My view is that a peace deal is inevitable. However bitter the Iranians may be feeling about the situation, they also are very wily. One of the oldest, longest standing civilizations on Earth, far exceeding the length of any civilization in Britain or in Europe, for example. They know what they're doing. And at the end, the regime change, which had been touted by Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel and also by the American president in Washington, now seems to be off the table. And some kind of an awkward truce is likely to replace it. But let's remember this, and I think everyone who commentates says this, and I will too. All Iran has to do to achieve the perception of victory is to survive. And so far they have. Do please like and subscribe if you can. It only takes you a moment to go to @Unprecedented TV and you'll find all the details there. I'm Lembit Öpik. That was Lembit Öpik Live. And we'll see if you go to the archive, you'll be able to find this program for all eternity. We'll see if we're right. Thanks very much.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.